first of all, thank you for being here. We really appreciate it. New Hope Runs, we wouldn't be able to do what we do without volunteers, and so we're very, very thankful for our volunteers. We're just gonna go through a small little orientation that kind of talks about who we are and they're kind of the rules and regulations for New Hope, because that needs to get out of the way before we can actually go out and work with the kids and the horses. So we ask that when you come in, that you check in on the QR code and then time out on the clipboard. And they're both sitting outside. I'll show them to you whenever we get in. And your time includes the time that you drive. And the reason we take these is for, this may be our last person. No, it's just wiggling. The reason we take this is that your volunteer time is actually worth a lot. I think the time that they allow amount they allow this year is like $23 an hour. And we use that information in our grants to show how valuable our volunteers are and how much that you really bring to our program. We want to go through just making sure that we are present ourselves as professional. We ask that there not be, we don't want our kids to learn a bad word from us at the very first time, so we watch our language. Some things about clothing. If you think about a rider being up on a horse and you're down right beside them, just make sure that you're modest in your clothing, because otherwise they have a view, and we don't want to be part of that. Riders can also pull on dangly earrings or on necklaces, so just be aware. We don't want earrings being pulled through your ears or losing them or whatever. I've never had a rider do that, but I need to tell you about that. So we do have a volunteer dismissal policy. We're not going to talk about it right now. You will learn about emergency procedures as you go through your training, but basically the three are: if you have a rider who's having an emergency, if there's a horse emergency, or if there's a weather emergency. So those are the three emergencies that we would be dealing with and that we will walk through with you as you get into your training. Horse Psychology 101 is just that horses are herd animals, they're fight or flight animals. They can get hurt just about in a padded room, they can hurt themselves, and they have signs that they show us that they're becoming distressed, and so we'll talk about those signs as well. We teach here at New Hope a certain process, and we do things a certain way, and I always want to tell people, if you've got horse experience, we're not saying that your experience is incorrect, but we have 12 horses on property and they might be handled by 15 people every week, and so for their benefit, we want to make sure that their experience is the same with all the volunteers that are handling them. So that's why we say this is the New Hope way, and we're not saying anybody else's way is wrong, but that's, we do it for the horse. So part of the warming up we'll see today, but we do it for a soundness check. We do it for the horse's brain to make sure that they're listening to us. Horses can zone out, and when we've got a leader and people on the side of them and a rider on top, we need to make sure that horses are paying attention to us and focusing on what we're asking them to do. We'll go through some leading techniques. Typically you come in and you start with sidewalking, and then if you would like to move on and go through leader training, we love that because we're always short of leaders, but it's a separate training. This is pretty much sidewalker training. I guess I should ask, are you wanting to do anything besides sidewalker right now? Are you, any of you wanting to do like office work or any of that kind of thing, or do you want to work with horses and riders? Horses.
I'm okay with both, but I get to do horse right now.
Okay, all right. communication. It's really important on a lot of different levels for our volunteers to communicate with staff and with instructors. One of the one of the big things is if you've got a horse that is, you notice something, they're hurting, you notice they're limping, you notice that they're, throwing their head a bunch, little behaviors that are not normal are normal horse behaviors, but they're telling us that something is wrong. We need to hear about that because we then go back and work with the horse and try to figure out what's going on. So don't feel like you're complaining against a horse or you're, telling on a horse or whatever. We need to know that our horses are in good shape and that they're not hurting and all of that. So we work on making sure that you feel free to talk to us. Also, if you have an issue with a rider, if you have an issue with another volunteer, if you have an issue with a staff member, please come to me. It's very open. We all are very family oriented here. We kind of treat all of our volunteers as family, and so we don't want there to be any issues. Reliability is really important in therapeutic riding, and what I mean by reliability is that if you signed up for a day or a time with a rider or a horse, it's really important for you to be there because our program runs on volunteers, and if I've got a rider who has to have a leader and a sidewalker in order to be able to ride, and one of them doesn't show up, I've got to turn that rider away. So I don't ever want to have to turn my riders away. Occasionally, we have weeks where it's, something's in the air or people are just busy with other things and we don't have enough volunteers to make a lesson, but we want that to be minimal. And so reliability is important. Another reason reliability is important is that riders become acquainted with and bond with their leaders and sidewalkers. They look forward to seeing you each week. And so, and a lot of our riders or participants need sameness. They need to have a pattern, they need to have structure, and it will throw them off if, something changes. And so we're not saying you can't ever have a day off if you need it, or that, but we ask that you try to be consistent with what you've said you're going to do. Attitude, just be happy. Really, just be happy and kind to each other. We already went through attire. This is the whole thing about being dismissed as a volunteer, and I'm going to go through it very quickly and then we're going to move on, but I have to cover it. So it's really important that we do not share client information with other people. It's fine to say, I had a rider today who has CP and he did this amazing thing. That's great. But you can't say, my rider, John, who has CP, had this kind of a day. We have to make sure that we're keeping confidential with our participants. Obvious things. Don't disrespect a client. Don't try to discipline a horse. When you've been taught safety procedures, please abide by them. If you continue to not show up and for something you've signed up for, we might say this might not be the right place for you. Conviction of a crime, being charged with sexual abuse, any of those things are big no-nos. Disrespectful behavior towards anything, horses, participants, volunteer, or staff. Don't do something with a horse or with tack that you haven't been cleared to do. And any one of those, we'll just simply talk with you and say maybe it's a better place for you to be doing data entry or other things. Okay, emergency procedures. We're gonna kind of weave in our horses amongst the emergency procedures because they're boring. So Missy is our oldest horse on property. She's 25 plus. We're not sure exactly what the actual age is, but she is an Arabian, and they are bred for endurance, and they do pretty well in hot weather. And we keep thinking that she's going to want to retire, and she keeps telling us she loves doing therapy lessons. So she's here. First aid kits. The human first aid kit is right outside the bathroom. The horse first aid kit is in the middle cabinet along the wall behind us. And then there's a fire extinguisher next to the cabinets. This picture makes Rain look a lot bigger than she is. She's a little teeny tiny pony. She came to us through rescue, and she is, you can see her pink eye. We try to keep a mask on her. She is partially blind in that eye, so with her, we like to pet on the shoulders, on the back. We don't really go for her face very often, because if she sees movement, she can startle. But she's a real sweet girl. We've had one medical emergency since we opened, and we've been seeing riders since 2014. I'm just going to tell you a little bit about that emergency, and that will kind of explain what everybody needs to have happen. We had a rider on our big horse, Tommy, our Belgian. He's humongous, and Tommy kept stopping, and we couldn't figure out why he kept stopping. He had a leader, and the leader was trying to get him to move, and it became apparent at one point that the rider was not hearing what I was saying, wasn't able to sort of comprehend the instructions I was giving. So we came up close, saw that she was having a seizure, not one that you could see outside, but it was like eyes rolling up and things of that nature. So what we did at that point is I told one of the volunteers, call 911, and then I had a volunteer with me that was like a first responder, and we took her off of the horse with a dismount that we will show. You need to know the dismount if you're a sidewalker, and then bring the first aid kit as directed. Just listen to your instructor's responses or what they ask you, and we move the horse out of the area. If there are multiple horses in the area, we ask all the horses to come to a complete standstill, and we might exit the arena. If we're down on the trail, we might bring all the other horses back up. Like I said, one time, but it was important that we knew what to do at that one time.
Charlotte, do you ask the ambulance to come in without sirens on?
We do. Yeah. We do ask them to come in without sirens. So this is basically what I just said. Halting and heading the horse is something that you learn in leading training, but the arm over thigh that we do with sidewalkers, that's something that you do when we have an emergency situation. And the instructor is absolute king in that situation. They are trained for this, and they know how to proceed, and so basically everybody just needs to follow the instructor's instructions. Flash. He's a sweet boy. He has a tendency to grind his teeth. He's a little bit nervous. He never outwardly does anything bad, but if he starts to get nervous, he'll grind his teeth. That's how he responds. He's not going to buck or rear or bite or anything like that. But we have some. He's out actually in a lesson right now, and he does great with riders. So with an emergency dismount, I'm not even going to talk about this right now because it's really hard to comprehend if you're not seeing it happen, and we'll show you what that looks like. This is Bo. He's one of our old men as well. Bo was a jumper in a lesson horse in his previous life. He's 24, but you'll notice him from his color, and he's got a single star on his forehead. And right outside the gate, right outside the door here, there's a bulletin board type that shows you exactly what pen each horse is in, and it has a picture of them, so you can go and look and see. If you need to go get a horse, you can go and look and see that. If we have a spooked horse, it might seem counterintuitive, but we do arm over thigh and we stay as close to the horse as possible as that horse moves. The horse leader will then try to halt the horse. They'll turn around and face the horse, which is called heading, so hopefully they'll stay still. But we need to stay with the horse. The horse leader's ultimate responsibility is the horse. The sidewalker's ultimate responsibility are the riders. And so we don't have a lot of spooks, but if we do have one, it's really important to stay as a sidewalker. It's important to get the arm over thigh going and stay with the rider. And then of course the instructor will make directions. I don't know what that is that keeps bumping up. This is Gabby. She's also over 20. She's the chestnut that's shorter, which is chestnut's a red horse with a star on the forehead, and she's the one with the long back. If we have a loose horse, occasionally it happens. I will tell you that sometimes when people bring Flash out, Daisy May wants to come out too. She's our mule, and so we try to send 2 people going to get her, but if we end up with a loose horse, we make sure that all the gates are closed. That's the very first thing that we do. All activities stop, horse leaders halt and head their horses. We do the thigh hold and we wait for instructor directions. When catching a loose horse, we never chase after a loose horse. Typically somebody will get a bucket of grain or something and just, shake the grain and get the horse to come to them, but the more you chase them, the more they run. This one's Cy, and his full name is Cyclops because he only has one eye. He's a paint, and we call him our lopsided horse because he's only got one eye. He has a tendency to only like to go in one direction, and so riders have a tendency to be lopsided. He lists to the right, and so when we have sidewalkers with the rider, they are careful to watch and make sure the saddle is staying in the middle, the rider is staying in the middle. We do have special pads that we put on him to try to keep it even, but he's our lopsided guy. We do have a severe weather warning system right inside the workshop here. If we get lightning within 10 miles, we shut everything down and we try to get people on their road to go home. If we have a tornado type thing, we're down here. This is the lowest spot. We'll be in this room. If a tornado is actually really coming towards us, we'll typically let the horses loose so that they can get away from it if possible. We've never had one right here, but we have had them in the area. Fire. In case of a fire, the horses go into the middle of the arena, which is because it's a wooden fence. It's not the best solution, but it is the best. It's the best one we have. This one's Olivia. She's our Gypsy Banner. She's black and white. She's got a big body and feathers on her feet, and not a huge fan of men. Loves little girls. Loves women. Likes to go slow. That's pretty much Olivia. Okay, we talked about the fire extinguisher. This is where we talk about emergency vehicles turning off their sirens. For fire. And we say either the ground pen or the top paddock by the road, the arena or the top paddock by the road. If we do that, if we're putting all the horses up in there, we cannot put Tommy and Bub with all the other horses because they're both bullies. And they bully the mares and the other horses. So Tommy and Bo have to be in a separate spot from everybody else. And then we meet, evacuate everything and meet up in the arena with the horses to stay away from the fire. This is Libby. She's a bay warm blood. She's got 2 white socks on her back, a little star in the front. She's also 24. She and Gabby both have Cushing's, which is equine diabetes, and so they have special medication that they take. She also has a tendency to sweat a lot and have a lot of hair. But other than that, she's very, very sweet. So we have kids who might drool. Sometimes their noses will run. It's not a bad idea to have a Kleenex or something, or a little baggie of Kleenex in your pocket. Make sure that you don't, if you come into contact with fluids, don't touch your face. Wash your hands as soon as possible. One of our riders out there right now brings with him a drool rag, and he'll, wipe his face with a drool rag. So as soon as you finish with his lesson, you do need to go in and have your, it's good to wash your hands regardless. This is Tommy. This is one of the boys that is a bully with Bo. They're very, what's the term, herd bound. They don't like to be separated. If Tommy goes out for a lesson, Bo will run up and down the fence line until he gets himself hot. So we try to use them in lessons together, but Tommy, although he is extremely big, almost 2,000 pounds, he is one of the gentlest horses that we have. This is the one who had the rider who was going through a seizure, and he knew it, and he just kept stopping. Yeah, he's very intuitive. Okay, so your role as you come in for the lesson, the way the lessons are established in sign up is that the horse leader, their time is 30 minutes before the lesson starts. The sidewalkers, the time is 15 minutes before the lesson starts. So when the horse leader gets here, they check the board, which we'll look at the board here in a minute. They go get their horse, they get the tack out, get all that ready. They do the warm-up for the horse. We also call it pre-flight. It's kind of like getting a plane ready to go off. We're getting the horse ready to be in a lesson. You won't learn that in today's training because that's a horse leader one, and that's a separate lesson. But primarily what we're doing in that warm-up is we're checking to make sure that the horse is listening to us. We're giving them some things that cause them to have to think so that they pay attention, and we're checking for soundness. The horse leader will then groom the horse, always includes feet, picking feet, tack the horse up, and lead them to the mounting ramp, and head them at the mounting ramp, which hopefully you'll be able to see that in this next lesson. The horse leader monitors the horse's behavior, reinforces riders' cues. The horse leader monitors the horse's behavior. The sidewalkers reinforce the rider's cues. We have some riders who like to talk all the way through the lesson and would never hear what the instructor said unless the sidewalker, encouraged that. We have some that need to be looked at. They need to hear you say it. Me saying it in the middle of the arena, they might not get it at all. So it's you're just helping the instructor make sure the rider knows what's going on, and the sidewalkers make sure the rider is balanced. I'm not really sure what accommodate sidewalkers is. I'm gonna pass that one up. Untack, pick feet, groom, and release. Grooming is, picking feet is part of grooming, but I always add that in because that's a piece that gets often forgotten. And our sensory trail has wood pieces in it, what's that called, mulch? And it can get stuck up in the rider's, the horse's feet. So, we wanna make sure we check those feet and they go back to their paddocks comfortably. Okay, so establishing yourself as the leader. The horse wants to know that you're boss. They want to know that you're strong and that they can depend on you. They are flight animals, so if you get scared at something, they're gonna pick up on that. Even if they don't see anything to be scared of, they're gonna pick up on that and read that from your body language. So, we basically, set ourselves up as the horse leader. We're confident, and that's why we train. We want confidence all the way through. Really, all we're gonna do at this point is we're gonna go out, we're gonna see the lesson in progress. I'm gonna show you a little bit about the tack room and the board, and we'll do a little bit of practice without, and then we'll sidewalk with a lesson in progress, and so you can see what it really looks like. Questions? No? Questions? No?
No.
Okay, all right, let's go. This was the boring part, the rest of it's fun.
The hands-on.
Okay.
You have lessons during the weekend and weekdays as well, right?
Yeah. We ride Tuesday through Saturday right now.
Okay.
So we do, Saturday, we've got morning right now, we have 2 lessons, and then we've got lessons Tuesday night through Friday night.